Welcome, my friends. Pull up a chair and come closer to the fire. Today, I want to tell you a story about something you see every single day. It is in your hands right now if you are holding a phone. It is in the windows of your home. It is even helping some of you see these words clearly through your glasses. We are going to talk about the history of glass. It is a story of fire, sand, and human imagination. It is a story that began by accident thousands of years ago. Are you ready? Let's begin our journey. Imagine you are standing on a beach a long, long time ago. The sun is setting and the air is getting cold. You are a traveler, perhaps a merchant from a land called Phoenicia. You need to cook your dinner, so you build a large fire on the sand. To keep your cooking pot steady, you use blocks of niter, a type of natural salt you are carrying on your ship. The fire burns hot. It burns all night long. The next morning, you look at the ashes of your fire. You see something strange. There is a hard, shiny material on the ground. It is not stone, it is not metal, it is clear, and it catches the morning light like a diamond. Do you see it in your mind? This was the accidental birth of glass. Science tells us that when sand meets high heat and certain minerals, it melts. It turns into a liquid that looks like honey. When it cools down, it becomes glass. In those ancient times, people did not understand the science. To them, it must have felt like magic. They saw a common grain of sand turn into a beautiful, transparent treasure. Think about that for a moment. How would you feel if you found a piece of frozen light in your campfire? You would probably pick it up and wonder, what is this? What can I do with this? This discovery changed everything. It was the spark that started a journey lasting 5,000 years. From that one small accident, humans began to learn how to master fire and earth to create something brand new. It was a slow start, of course. For a long time, glass was rare. It was a mystery waiting to be solved. But soon, in the great civilizations of the past, artists began to play with this magical material. Our story now moves to the grand cities of ancient Egypt and Mesopotamia. Imagine the heat of the desert and the blue water of the Nile River. In these places, glass was not just a material, it was a symbol of power. 5,000 years ago, glass was as valuable as gold or gemstones. Why? Because it was so difficult to make. People did not have the big factories we have today. They had to work with small hot ovens and their own hands. In Egypt, they made glass beads. These beads were often a deep, beautiful blue. They looked like the sky, or the precious stone called lapis lazuli. Can you imagine a pharaoh wearing a necklace of glass? To the people of that time, glass was a piece of the heavens brought down to earth. The Egyptians used a technique called core forming. They would make a shape out of mud and sand, then pour hot, liquid glass over it. When the glass became hard, they scraped out the mud. What was left? A tiny, beautiful bottle. These bottles were used for the most expensive perfumes and oils. Only the richest people in the world could own one. In Mesopotamia, they were also masters of glass. They wrote down their recipes for glass on clay tablets. They realized that by adding different minerals, they could change the color. They could make glass that looked like emeralds or rubies. It is amazing to think that these ancient people, with very simple tools, created such beauty. They didn't use glass for windows yet. They didn't use it for drinking water. They used it for art. Glass was a secret kept by the kings and the priests. It was a fragile treasure. But soon, a new empire would rise, and they would take this secret and share it with the world. Now, let us travel forward in time to the Roman Empire. The Romans were famous for their roads, their armies, and their buildings. but they also changed the history of glass forever. For thousands of years, glass was thick and heavy. But about 2,000 years ago, someone had a brilliant idea. We don't know his name, but his invention was a miracle. He took a long, hollow metal pipe. He put a piece of hot, melted glass on the end of it. And then, he did something simple. He blew air into the pipe. Imagine a child blowing a bubble with soap and water. The glass grew. It became thin and round. It was glass blowing. This changed everything, my friends. Before this, making a glass bottle took days. Now, it took minutes. Suddenly, glass was no longer just for kings. It became something for the common people. The Romans started making glass bowls, cups, and jars for everyone. Have you ever wondered why we call a drink a glass? We can thank the Romans for that. They were the first to make glass so cheap that ordinary families could use it at dinner. The Romans also did something else incredible. They made the first windows. They weren't like our windows today. They were thick and hard to see through, but they let light into a room while keeping the wind out. Can you feel the excitement of that time? Imagine a dark stone house suddenly filled with sunlight. This was the Roman Revolution. They took a royal luxury and turned it into a daily tool. They spread glassmaking across Europe, from Italy to France to England. Glass was no longer a mystery. It was a part of life. But as the Roman Empire fell, the world became a darker place. The secrets of glass had to find a new home. As we enter the Middle Ages, the world feels different. This was a time of knights, castles, and great stone cathedrals. During this period, glass took on a spiritual meaning. In the medieval world, many people could not read or write. Books were very rare. So, how did they learn the stories of their faith? They looked at the windows. Artists learned how to mix metal oxides into glass to create brilliant colors, deep reds, bright blues, and glowing greens. They cut these pieces of colored glass and joined them together with lead. We call this stained glass. Imagine walking into a dark, cold stone cathedral. Suddenly, you look up. The sun shines through a giant window. The floor is covered in dancing colors of red and gold. It must have felt like a miracle. People called it the light of God. These windows told stories through pictures. They showed heroes, queens, and ancient tales. In a world that was often gray and difficult, these windows were a window into another world. They were a way to bring beauty to everyone, rich and poor alike. While the artists were making windows in France and Germany, another group of glassmakers was working in secret in Italy. On a small island called Murano, near Venice, they were discovering how to make glass that was as clear as water. In the Middle Ages, most glass was a bit green or brown because of the sand. But the Venetians wanted something better. They wanted cristallo, crystal clear glass. Why was this important? Because for the first time, glass was becoming a way to see the truth. Clear glass didn't hide anything. It showed the world exactly as it was. But the Venetians were very protective of their secrets. If a glassmaker tried to leave the island of Murano to share his secrets, he could be put in prison, or worse. Glass was the high technology of the Middle Ages. We have reached the Renaissance, a time of rebirth. This was a time when humans began to look at themselves and the world in a new way, and glass played a very special role in this change. On that island of Murano I mentioned, the glassmakers finally succeeded. They created a glass so clear it was like looking through air. They also perfected something we use every morning, the mirror. Think about this. Before the Renaissance, most people never saw their own faces clearly. They might see a blurry reflection in a pond of water or a piece of polished metal. But with the invention of the glass mirror, everything changed. For the first time, you could see the color of your eyes, the lines on your face, and the details of your expression. This sounds simple to us, doesn't it? But it was a revolution for the human mind. People began to think more about the self. Artists began to paint self-portraits. We became more aware of our own identity. The mirror was a luxury. A single mirror from Venice could cost as much as a large ship. Kings and queens decorated their palaces with them to show their wealth. But glass in the Renaissance wasn't just for looking at ourselves. It was also becoming more artistic. The Venetians created filigree glass, which had delicate white threads of glass inside it. It looked like lace made of stone. During this time, glass became a symbol of elegance and science. It was delicate and fragile, yet it could last forever if handled with care. However, as beautiful as these handmade treasures were, they were still slow to make. The world was growing, and more people wanted glass. They wanted windows for their homes and bottles for their medicine. To give glass to everyone, we needed a new kind of power. We needed the power of machines. Now, imagine the sound of steam engines and the smell of coal smoke. We are in the 18th and 19th centuries, the Industrial Revolution. This is the moment when glass stopped being a luxury and became a necessity for everyone. Before this time, making a large sheet of flat glass for a window was very hard. Glass blowers had to blow a giant cylinder of glass, cut it, and flatten it out while it was still hot. It was dangerous and expensive. But then, inventors created machines that could roll glass like dough for bread. They created plate glass. Suddenly, windows could be huge. Imagine the excitement in 1851 when the Crystal Palace was built in London. It was a massive building made almost entirely of glass and iron. People had never seen anything like it. It felt like living in a palace of light. This changed how we built our cities. Shops started having large display windows, so people could see the products inside. Glass also changed how we stored food and medicine. Factories could now produce millions of glass bottles. This made life safer because glass is inert. It doesn't react with the things inside it. Your milk stayed fresh, and your medicines stayed pure. Can you see how glass was making the world cleaner and brighter? It was no longer a secret kept on an island in Venice. It was being made in giant factories in America, England, and Germany. But there was another side to glass that was even more important for the future of human knowledge. It wasn't about the size of the glass, but the shape of it. Glass was about to become our eyes to see the invisible parts of our world. My friends, let's take a moment to look at the glass in a different way. Not as a window or a bottle, but as a lens. Have you ever used a magnifying glass? Or do you wear glasses to read? This is perhaps the greatest gift glass has given to humanity. In the 1600s, scientists started to realize that if you curved a piece of glass, it could change how light moves. It could make small things look big, and far things look near. Think about a man named Galileo. He took two pieces of glass, put them in a tube, and pointed it at the sky. For the first time, a human saw the craters on the moon and the moons of Jupiter. Then, think about a man named Leeuwenhoek. He used a tiny piece of glass to look at a drop of water. He was the first person to see microbes, the tiny living things that cause disease. Without glass lenses, we would not know about the stars. We would not know about bacteria. We would still be living in a world of mystery. And think about the millions of people who could not work or read because their eyes were weak. The invention of eyeglasses was a quiet miracle. It allowed people to stay productive and keep learning as they got older. Glass became the bridge between the human eye and the truth of the universe. It allowed us to look up at the galaxies and down at the cells of our bodies. Is it not amazing? This material, made from simple sand, expanded our minds. It gave us the power of sight beyond our natural limits. But even with all these discoveries, the story of glass was not finished. In the 20th century, glass would move from our eyes to our fingertips. We are now in the present day. Look around you. You are likely surrounded by glass, but you might not even think about it. In the 20th and 21st centuries, glass has become high-tech. We have learned how to make glass that is incredibly strong. The glass on the screen, often called Gorilla Glass, is designed to survive things that would have shattered ancient glass in a second. But there is a type of glass you cannot see that is even more important. It is inside the cables under the ground and under the ocean. We call it fiber optics. These are tiny, thin threads of glass, no thicker than a human hair. Instead of carrying water or perfume, they carry light. This light is actually data, your emails, your videos, and this very story I am telling you. Every time you use the internet, you are using glass. The modern world is connected by a web of glass threads. Without them, the digital age would not exist. We also use glass to build our modern cities. Look at the skyscrapers in New York, Dubai, or Tokyo. They are like giant mirrors reaching for the sky. This glass is specially made to keep the heat out and the cool air in. It is both beautiful and functional. We even use glass to save the planet. Solar panels use special glass to protect the cells that turn sunlight into electricity. Think about how far we have come. We started with a small, accidental lump of glass in a campfire. Now, we use glass to communicate across the world in an instant and to capture the energy of the sun. Glass is no longer just a material. It is the invisible skeleton of our modern life. It is everywhere, yet it is so clear that we often forget it is there. As our fire begins to fade, let's reflect on what we have learned. The history of glass is really the history of human progress. We took the most common thing on Earth, sand, and turned it into something extraordinary. We used it to decorate our bodies, to light our homes, to see the stars, and to build the internet. What does the future hold for glass? Scientists are now creating smart glass. Imagine a window that turns into a computer screen when you touch it, or glass that can heal itself if it gets a scratch. We are also looking at glass as a solution for the environment. Glass is 100% recyclable. You can melt a glass bottle and make a new one forever without losing quality. In a world that is worried about plastic, glass is a green hero. My friends, the journey of glass is a story of transformation. It shows us that even the simplest things can become magical if we use our curiosity and our courage. Next time you drink from a glass, or look out a window, or check your phone, take a second to remember the fire on the beach. Remember the Egyptian artists, the Roman blowpipes, and the Venetian mirrors. The story of glass is still being written, and you are a part of it. Every time you look through a lens to learn something new, you are continuing a 5,000-year-old tradition of seeking the light. Thank you for sitting with me by the fire today. I hope you see the world a little more clearly now, through the magic of glass. Safe travels, until we meet again for another story.